The two groups, Tex, Katie, Leslie, and Linda, Sadie, Clem, each made their way to Spahn Ranch in the early morning. As we walked on in the pre-dawn darkness, we came across a reservoir. I threw the bayonet out as far as I could into the water. Finally, we settled down under a tree in a vacant lot, waiting for dawn. Once the sky started to lighten, we began walking again. I was still carrying my bloody clothes, and when we found a large cardboard box full of trash at the curb, I pushed them down under the grass and garbage. Shortly afterward, we met a man coming out for his morning paper and got directions to the Golden State Freeway. We were picked up in a beat-up, multicolored car by a hippie. Ironically, he knew Spahn Ranch. He'd been there about a year before and thought he recognized the girls. While Leslie played up to him enough to get us a ride all the way to Chatsworth, we spent most of the time telling him about Helter Skelter, never mentioning what we had just done to bring it down, and paid for the food out of the bag of coins we'd stolen from the La Bianca house. Charlie had already gone back into the hills to a camp we had by a waterfall, so I didn't see him. The girls disappeared, and I flopped down on a mattress in one of the buildings, ready to sleep. Yet I felt nothing for what had been done to 7 innocent people and an unborn child. Charlie had killed all that sort of feeling in me, just as I had killed those 7 strangers. As dawn rose, Charlie wanted to find out how bloodthirsty the 2 trios in Los Feliz and Venice had been. I went back to the buildings and was relieved to see some of the kids from each group. Sadie was off sleeping somewhere, but Clem and Linda let me know what had happened in Venice. Nothing. The 3 of them had gone to the apartment Linda identified and knocked on the door. They gave up and hitchhiked back to the ranch. As for Katie, Leslie, and Tex, they reported they had done the number of numbers at the La Bianca residence. Stab wounds were as plentiful as those administered the previous night. Diane saw Leslie early on Sunday, August 10th. I heard Leslie come in probably around 7. She'd been out all night. She came in and dumped a bunch of things on her bed. She asked me to help her get some firewood, which we used to build a fire. She took a rope off her bed that was with the pile of stuff and put it in the flames. She also added a brown purse and some credit cards. We both turned and saw some headlights headed our way. Leslie begged me to help her out and pulled the rope out of the flames, ran into the bathroom and tried to put it out. "Snake, don't let that man see me," she said. "He just gave me a ride from Griffith Park." Then she jumped into her bed, pulling the sheet over her entire body and face. 3 men pulled up to the front of the house, but only one of them approached. He pushed his way partially through the door and asked about Leslie. I told him she wasn't in, and he insisted that he had just dropped her off. I tried not to look rattled, so I just stared him down. In only a few minutes, he got into his car and left. Leslie must have been holding her breath because there was no sign of movement until she decided it was safe enough to remove the sheet. She handed me some wood to build up the fire again. She finished burning the little brown purse, even though it was difficult. It didn't catch very easily. The credit cards burned, and then she took off the clothing she was wearing and burned that too. I watched the flames consume everything while she took a shower. When she got out of the shower, she showed me a plastic bag of coins and dumped them on the table. We both counted about $8 without counting the Canadian coins. I had no idea that this was all taken from the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. The night the LaBiancas were slaughtered was intended to be the second in a series of shocking spree killings, with more to follow, all designed to inspire retribution killings against Black people and thereby ignite Helter Skelter. Charlie insisted on driving the second night, convinced that the killers failed to follow his orders the previous evening, not believing they were so exhausted after Cielo that they couldn't go to another house and repeat their actions. Now he'd had a taste of what they experienced. He admitted feeling depleted and unsure what the next step should be. Although Susan Atkins later claimed that we had a death list of famous Hollywood stars was untrue, Charlie had made it clear that 2 nights would not be the end of it, that we would do more and more killing until either the Blacks or the Whites took matters into their own hands and Helter Skelter would begin. Watson wrote that a third night of killing was contemplated, but that the family wasn't sent out to kill again on Sunday because of him. He claimed that his mom called a friend of his on August 10th, who called Spahn Ranch to pass on the message. When Tex told Charlie, he said he thought they were about to be busted. He asked Charlie what to do. Charlie told him to call his mother back, but Tex was scared. He thought he'd give himself away, so he lied and told Charlie that he had called her, and she said the FBI came to see her about some murders in L.A. His mother may have tried to call him after the murder, but it's doubtful it was the next day. Still, Tex convinced Manson that he should go to Death Valley and begin searching for the bottomless pit. Charlie agreed, and Watson left sometime before August 14th. He went to Olanche, 3 hours north of Barker Ranch, where ranch hand Dave Hannum's family owned a property. Leslie believed the plan was to select 3 large cities on the West Coast and launch a massive attack of murder and mayhem to start helter-skelter. Nikki Meredith explained Van Houten's ability to tap into her rage. Most evaluators expressed bewilderment that a girl with such bright beginnings had become a murderer, but one, Joel Hockman, stated that he was not surprised. In a 1971 report, he divined homicidal rage from an early age. That rage, he implied, derived from her too comfortable early years. He described her as a child with poor impulse control and given to temper tantrums, a spoiled little princess who was unable to suffer frustration and delayed gratification. He was not at all puzzled, he wrote, that this rage was directed at Mrs. LaBianca. Let me make it clear, Mrs. LaBianca was an object, a blank screen upon which Leslie projected her feelings. These feelings were, in fact, feelings she had toward her mother, her father, toward the establishment. Actually, if you think about it, Mrs. LaBianca in many ways was the future Leslie Van Houten, an affluent white woman in a comfortable home with pretty clothing. If you get even more specific, look at Leslie and look at Rosemary. Don't they resemble one another? Both attractive, slender brunettes with brown eyes. I don't know that Leslie would have recognized herself in the middle-aged Rosemary, but years later it was clear there was a minor physical resemblance, and perhaps we can wonder if she was stabbing or killing or rejecting some part of herself, the part she would surely have been fated to live out had she not participated in that horrifying night of murder.